Tonight on GVN Live, it's Waifu Holocaust, and we're going to be talking about Maxis, a shell of their former selves, here on GVN Live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a long time. We took an extra week off. I wasn't feeling good last week. Jan wasn't feeling good last week. Mark was just not giving a shit. How's everybody doing?
Last week, thank you very much, sir.
You moved the week before that, and
right,
then
and
you
I
had your surgery.
Yeah. Then I had my gallbladder removed. That was fun. Let me tell you.
Okay, so it's been a long 3 weeks. So what has everybody been up to? Jen, how are you doing besides, recovering from surgery and moving in?
Oh, goodness. So the movie was great. It was super quick. Mostly because I showed up with nothing but a backpack. So that was fun. That was good. I felt like a hobo. However, I finally have all of my stuff back. So that I have my figures and an actual desk for the first time in, 10 years. My roommates are finally both in the house now, so it's a real house now. We have everything we need except for a television stand, and my camera's being a fuck-up. Better internet, better place. It's just like home, and I'm super excited to be here. And then after a week, I got a gallbladder infection, enough that not only did my gallbladder double in size, but had to be removed the same day. That was awesome. Yeah, don't do that. So I've been up and down for the last couple of weeks. Really, it's been hectic for me. I've been trying to get as many games in as I possibly can between being up and not being up, which has basically been offline Monster Hunter and 14 maybe. I'm not really sure. I tend to find small things to play here and there, but other than that, I'm alive, so.
Hey, that's good.
That's a plus. That's a plus.
And how about you, Mark? You got a new member of the family, didn't you?
Yes, I got a cat.
Tell us about
I've
Kitty.
been posting about her. Oh, her name is Molly, and she's adorable. I've been posting pictures of her on Twitter and on Instagram and on Facebook, and she's presently lying on my beanbag and bathing herself because she's endlessly bathing herself.
That sounds like literally every cat ever.
Except the cats that like to attack people.
Usually she's quite adorable, though.
That's good. Do we want to just go over some quick news things that have gone on recently? Like Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate got announced. Like, we didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I still really don't understand the much ado concept about people pissing and moaning about the whole thing, because we kind of knew that it was going to happen. It's just, it was completely sensible for them to hold that back a bit so that there wasn't any kind of direct conflict between Monster Hunter World and the Switch game, and so that they could devote all of their resources to Monster Hunter on the consoles and PC and whatnot, so that they weren't spreading themselves too thin trying to translate and develop and manufacture two different games at the same time. It was completely sensible to do this thing, and it made perfect sense that they would eventually want to get the Switch game out there, because the Switch is a very popular console, and of course you want to make as much money as you possibly can. But for whatever reason, people were just extremely fucking mad about that concept. So ... question mark. I just did not understand the rage, especially considering that a lot of it was from people who were decidedly Nintendo fanboys. Let's just call that what it is. I have at least one person that I follow who was intensely fucking angry about this, and I'm sorry, I like him perfectly fine, but Stealth, you're a fucking fanboy. You know you are. Let's just call a spade. And just, oh my god, just so fucking angry about it. So when they announced that, Monster Hunter is coming for the Switch, I was like, oh good, finally everybody be happy. No, he's still fucking taking shots at Monster Hunter World. Okay.
I'm actually more. I don't see as much anger in regards to what you were just talking about. I've seen more anger in regards to the elitist snobs just coming out of the woodwork now saying, oh, finally, a real Monster Hunter game is coming out. You noobs continue playing your casual Monster Hunter World. We're going to go over to Nintendo now and
play. And go fuck yourself, you fucking elitist pieces of shit. Just eat my entire ass.
That is what I
never give a fuck what you elitist motherfuckers think. Oh, well, there's so much more content, and it's so much like a real Monster Hunter, and blah, blah. Fuck off.
Speaking of
I've
fucking
been playing
off,
Monster Hunter since it first came out. Since it first came out on the PlayStation 2. And all y'all motherfuckers can suck my dick. Because I guarantee a lot of you did not start playing until it fucking came to the 3DS. Shut the fuck up.
I look at it this way, I know people have been playing Monster Hunter the same length of amount of time, and they are super, blasé about Double X coming to the States. They're like, oh, good, Double X is Monster Hunter. 96 fucking monsters. That's a lot of fucking things to hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the deal. Out of all of the people that I know who have played original Monster Hunter back in PS2, online I might even have said as much that there is 2 different versions of this game that they get to play now. Monster Hunter World for when they are at home and playing on their home console because it is just a better experience. And Double Cross or Generations Ultimate or whatever the hell they're calling it in the States at this point. Fucking Championship Turbo Edition now featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series. Oh, wait. I make him and is sad at you, but he loves you anyway.
With Sakura costume mods on the side. Yeah.
I'm actually really upset that they aren't gonna. There's a couple of crossovers from X that they're not bringing over to the States for Monster Hunter World that I'm pretty upset about. Which is they actually have one for the Palicos that does Sailor Moon. Anyway, and Hello Kitty. Anyway, look, the thing about Double Cross coming to the States is that they're basically like, I'm gonna ad hoc the fuck out of this when we're somewhere we don't have any internet connectivity, and that's about it. Because there is way too much of a time commitment in Monster Hunter in general. The reason why it has done as well as it has in Japan alone is purely based on the fact that it's been mobile for so long and didn't need to worry about, God forbid, trying to play Monster Hunter on dial-up internet. Because
but that was the experience of a lifetime back then. Dial-up, 56K. If Phantasy Star Online users could do that, why couldn't Monster Hunter players do it?
Because so I'm not gonna knock PSO2. I'm not gonna knock PSO. I'm not gonna knock Monster Hunter when it comes to online. Because yes, dial-up was the thing at the time, and the games were enhanced specifically for a dial-up. They were built around that. But knowing full well that they were built around that kind of an environment, knowing that you needed to have to worry about dial-up latency for an action-oriented game that required hit detection, that blew fucking people's minds back in the day. So it's like, yeah, of course, that's a great thing, but they're like, maybe if we make it mobile, because that's where everything's headed. Yeah, no. We still want it to be on a home console. There's just something more familiar about knowing that this is where the game came from, and these are the roots of the system. The fact that it came out on multiple platforms and PC in the future is perfectly fine. It's just a matter of knowing that Monster Hunter World is the core game that they have been concentrating on, and that Double Cross is something that's off on the side that they are still going to have a separate team working on building so that we don't have to worry about whether or not we're going to need to worry, oh, this is going to interfere with, this one's going to interfere with this one. And no, it's not. It's really not. They're 2 separate teams. The games aren't going to interfere with anything. if anything, most of the Monster Hunter fans are going to play them both because they're like, why not? It's more Monster Hunter. Why wouldn't you play both of them? It's stupid to think that there's somebody who's elite about Monster Hunter going, oh, I'm going to play Nintendo now. It's like Monster Hunter World
so big? Because I play a hardcore game.
Monster Hunter is a hardcore game regardless of what you play it on.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah. But hey, segue. That was so smooth. Let's just move on to our next topic, or actually, our first topic. Your camera started fuzzing in and out. I like that. Looks like it was going into your dream sequence.
No, not again.
Okay, so our first topic of the night, and I will hand this one over to Mark because this one hits him personally.
It doesn't hit me personally. It's just a thing that I'm aware of. So,
oh my god.
There has always been a sort of a long-standing conflict between developers of games which are a bit more risque and Steam. Steam does not want to host adult-oriented material on their service for a lot of reasons. Developers want to be able to host their content on Steam because it's basically the largest marketplace available. So, a lot of developers have kind of sort of attempted to push the envelope in various different ways, including more and more risque content. But for the most part, a lot of them, especially for visual novels and things of that nature, have attempted to get around Steam's general bans on adult-oriented material by including patches that can be downloaded from external sources. Originally, that was fine. And then Steam said, well, you can't do this. Like, you can't directly link to your patches yourselves on your Steam account. They can still be out there. We just don't want you directly linking to them on Steam. And that was fine. Over the course of the past week, a bunch of developers started getting direct contact from Steam about their content, however, including HoneyDev, the creator of HoneyPop and HoneyCam Studio, as well as LupeSoft, developer of a game Mutiny that I believe has not come out yet, and Manga Gamer, who's released a bunch of different games, as well as, I believe, NecoWorks.
NecoWorks.
Who had recently released a game called Tropical Kiss, which was the game in question that they got heat for. All of these developers were basically contacted and told, your games have some shit in them. And we would kind of like you to maybe dial this back a bit more than it has been within a set period of time, or we're going to have to delist these games. It was like a 2-week deadline or something to that effect, which was a direct pushback against what Steam had originally agreed was more or less okay. This has been, I guess, taken ownership of. Like, I don't really know how you want to describe it. The people claiming responsibility for our group called the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, formerly known as Morality in Media, which they've been around for a very long time, and nobody has given a shit about them for years and years and years because they're basically just fucking shitty religious watchdogs. Just call it what it is. But they're claiming that they're contesting this stuff with Steam is what ultimately got this action to occur. So the most vocal person associated with the whole situation has been Brian Coons, aka HoneyDev, who has basically made it known directly that all of these things have been happening to whatever extent, and has been directly commenting on the situation using the hashtag waifu holocaust, because I guess he couldn't come up with waifu final solution.
Oh my god.
And just fuck you. But and they finally announced, all the devs who've been affected by this have announced as of yesterday that they've been given a reprieve. It may not be permanent. It may still be an issue, but Steam has basically said that they're reevaluating the situation and attempting to decide what it is that they want to do, more or less. So, on one hand, you kind of have the fact that there is a big to-do about Steam having agreed to a certain degree of lascivious content in their games that they sell, and then walking that back. But on the other hand, you have to deal with the fact that Ryan Coons is just the biggest fucking piece of shit on God's creation. And I absolutely feel as though, that this sucks, this situation is bad. I would support having his games delisted just on principle of him being a douche. Sorry, he just sucks. He's just an objectively terrible person, and I hate him.
So, in a nutshell,
there is no nutshell about this.
There isn't actually. What the hell, man? It's
So,
how long is it? When was the first adult themed visual novel game actually put on Steam?
oh god, ages ago.
Years ago, yeah.
Yeah. It's been a long time.
So let's say maybe almost 10 years since then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why make a stink about it now?
House Party.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. House Party is one of the targeted games.
Though, to be fair,
Flat out.
House Party, as originally released on Steam, was decidedly in violation of Steam's requirements. Now, I do want to note that the argument that people are making, and Mew is making it in the chat now, is that there are other games that have lascivious content in them that are not being censored in this way. And here's my thing. I do agree to a point that there is a certain amount of double standard at play, but I do think that all of the games that are on Steam right now, all of the visual novels that are being targeted, would probably broach pretty close to the AO line if they were to be reviewed by the ESRB.
Exactly.
Conan Exiles, Rust,
Oh boy.
Mass Effect Andromeda, The Witcher 3, and other sorts of games have been rated by the ESRB and have been found to be mature. Now, if, let's say, Honey Pop in its edited form were submitted, I've played the game in its edited form, and there's still just tits everywhere. In a decidedly sexualized fashion. I do think it would probably get an AO. And we can have a conversation about what sort of a problem America has with some of its more puritanical values, and that's a completely reasonable conversation to have. And I would be inclined to feel as though sexualization in video games in general is probably fine, but I do think that Steam, while them holding this sudden change is unfortunate and is a big change to these developers, it is kind of sort of consistent with the way that they have handled their business. They don't necessarily want stuff that's AO on their platform, And a lot of these games probably do come pretty close to being AO.
AO. Mm-hmm.
And I do also want to address the point that is being made now. When Steam asks your age, you make sure that you're 18. That's no longer Valve's or the devs' issues. That's your fault for not being able to handle it. Well, the problem is that Valve is still sort of a gatekeeper. Retailers don't want to carry AO titles either, because that sort of reflects badly, in their mind, on them as a platform holder. That's why you're never going to see a hentai game on PlayStation 4 or on Xbox One or on the Switch, because the platform holders don't want these games on their platform. Now, they're even in Japan, even in Japan, they don't do that. Even in
Senran
Japan,
Kagura.
they don't do that. Senran Kagura is M for mature.
Mm-hmm.
It's M for mature.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get to the point of it being pornographic. There's not nipples in the game. There is not nipples.
You're right. There isn't. There isn't. That's correct. However, there have been a number of people who are still relatively up in arms about Peach Beach Splash.
Yes.
And
I absolutely agree. And I absolutely agree that they're going to be up in arms about the Switch game that's coming, where you fucking massage Asuka?
Dead or Alive, Extreme Beach Volleyball, Venus Vacation.
What about it?
Just, if we're going to talk about Peach Beach Splash, might as well throw in the latest
no
update to DOA.
nipples. There is no nipples.
Peach Beach Splash is M for mature. It is M
exactly.
for mature.
It's ESRB rated.
And I would believe the DOA Extreme 3 would also be M for mature if it were brought to the US.
That's not happening.
No, that's not going to happen because, a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons that we have discussed in the past.
Yes, we have.
Not limited to the fact that Team Ninja of America just does not give a fuck. They want actual fucking games. And listen, I've played DOA Extreme 3. I own it. It's not very good.
It's garbage.
But here's my thing. You're not going to see a full-on hentai game on any of these platforms. You're just not. You're not going to see Honey Pop even in its current form on Sony's store. You're not going to see it on Switch. You're not going to see it on Xbox Live. And it's a popular game. It made a lot of money. You're not going to see those. Now, you could argue, well, a company like Steam could enforce age verification to ensure that somebody who is, of the legal age can buy these games. Yeah, you could do that, but you're also going to lock people out of being able to purchase the stuff, and they're not legally required to be of age to buy it in general. Like, you're not legally required to be 17 years old to buy an M for mature game. Like, you can just, the stores enforce that, but they're not legally required to put you in that position. So Steam is not legally required to enforce age verification. They're not required to make you put your driver's license in, and thank fucking God for that, because that would be an annoying shit show for a lot of people, especially people who don't have fucking ID. But once you start getting into the category of stuff that could be potentially considered pornography adjacent, that's when people start getting pissy.
So, I mean, now as Mew is saying in the chat, one of the biggest reasons for this whole fiasco is a religious zealot group who, has to stick their nose in everything. But religious zealot groups sticking their nose in video game censorship has pretty much been going on for off and on for the last 30 years. So this is really nothing new, but
No.
it just seems like they pick a new target every time they come out. This time it's, of course, House Party and all the other censored hentai games that have come out. Back then it was games like Grand Theft Auto. Before that it was Night Trap and Mortal Kombat. Before that, Custer's Revenge. But it's just like, where do you stop the cycle of allowing people like the ESRB, video game companies, to actually step in and just say, you know what, hey, we hear your concerns, but please shut the fuck up.
Well, it's the thing is that having said all of what I've said regarding understanding why Steam would do what they would do, let's be clear. Morality in Media has existed since 1962. They're an American nonprofit group that is basically a political watchdog that says, pornography is bad. That has always been their raison d'etre. They hate pornography. Morality in Media is bullshit. All of the people in its group are deeply, deeply boring motherfuckers who nobody has listened to in years. So they changed their name to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which is name-wise a concept that people are a little bit more sensitive to right now, because we had laws that were passed recently that eliminated, Backpage and the Craigslist personals and whatnot because it was kind of prostitution and exploitation adjacent. Regardless of your opinion of that, and let's be clear, there are definitely reasons to think that that's bullshit. Not my talking point here. My point is, they've changed their name to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation specifically because they want to lean in on that particular concept. Morality in Media was an organization nobody gave a fuck about. Like, people had stopped listening to them many years ago. Changing their name to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation at least gives them a nugget of credibility. If I had to venture a guess, probably what happened was Steam did whatever it was that they did that caused all of this to happen. And then when the National Center on Sexual Exploitation took credit for it, Steam was like, wait a minute, nobody gives a fuck what these people think. And that was when they decided to backpedal on it and be like, hey, this isn't as much of a thing as we were, thinking it was, etc.
Right. I mean, so, and this is just to sort of sidetrack a little bit, but if you actually look up the Zero rating on Dead or Alive Extreme 3, even like the updated versions, they're all D, which is 17 plus. They're not Z at all. None of them are Z.
Yep.
So, and you have fucking Marie Rose on the cover of the fucking game, who is decidedly lowly in the general sense of the term. And she's in the game, and it is still rated D, which means 17 plus, which is basically our M, as it should be.
Yep.
So when you really boil down to, doesn't matter where it's from, doesn't matter what it is, there is still a group who is out there who is basically on a warpath to stop pornography in general. They just happened to find that there were these specific games that were just putting a bunch of really fundamental people up a wall, like House Party, okay? And this is really the interesting part. If you actually go to their website, the exploitation website, 99% of the games that are on that page that they're talking about that are exploitive are all anime-based games. Most of them are visual novels. They have a couple of specific examples that are in 3D or VR. 99% of those games are anime. They're 2D. And they're put into a position or a light where they're basically shown off as, this is easily manipulative in a sort of non-consentive way. Except for the fact that in Japan, it is a law that they must all be portrayed as at least being 18 years or older. Period. That is the law in Japan. While the age of consent is 13, the age of legality in porn is 18 years old, like it is just about everywhere else in the world, except for a few European countries that pass on what this is about. So the baseline is, it doesn't matter what the game could or could not be actually rated. It's more a matter of the fact that these guys have gotten to a point where they're just like, video games are violent, and video games are pornography, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I get it. But you're taking it from a really extremist point of view where it's like, I think you're a little crazy, and this isn't really as bad as you think it is. Because it's not Steam's job to keep an eye on what your kid decided to buy with your credit card because you weren't paying attention to him, and we're using the computer and your console as a teaching and learning and parenting device. This is an argument that has been going on for almost 2 generations now. I can guarantee it, at least since the early 90s, okay? So we've gone through 30-something years of video gaming, and we're still blaming the fact that these kids are getting their hands on porn because you're not paying attention? Not my fault. That's on you, big boy. And if you can't be responsible enough to understand that this is your fault and that this is something that you have allowed your small children to get into, then I'm sorry. That's on you. That's not on Steam. That's not on the devs. It's not on the publishers. That's not on anybody else but you. And if you have the gall and the nerve to roll in and basically tell everybody this is exploitive, well, let me tell you. M is rated mature 17 plus. Zero D is 17 plus. Peggy 16 is 17 plus. All of the rating systems across the entirety of our globe tell you flat out that if it's a AAA title or if it's on a console, it's not for kids. Steam has a way to tell you, yes, you must be of age because this game is going to be or is actually rated M for mature, which means you must be at least 17 years old to even look at the trailers. And even then, the trailers are usually super tame, almost always tame, for all of those visual novel games. So the only way that you are ever going to know that these games are as bad as they are, minus House Party, because that's the selling point of the game, you're not going to know that these games even have pornography unless it's tagged, which Steam says you have to, and it's behind that 18 plus wall, which Steam says you have to, and you have to worry about the fact that the trailer doesn't have nudity, but you have to buy the game to find out. That's a paywall. If you're not following behind those 3 problems, then I'm sorry. That is your fucking problem. And if you can't handle that on your own and be a parent and be an adult and understand that porn exists in the world, shock. I don't know what else to tell you.
In regards to, it's all on the parents or whoever is responsible for the kids, for having access to the porn and whatnot. And of course, Steam has the legality to tell you, hey, this is not, suitable for you. But then again, like we just saw, you said the game House Party is obviously a game that should never have gotten on there. So don't you think Steam should take some kind of responsibility for like, hey, yo, we fucked up here? And it's still on Steam, by the way. House Party is still acceptable.
Yes, because they put in an adults only patch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because they have a patch for the game. So if you download the game in its current form off Steam, it doesn't have that content.
Right.
Which is what you were talking about earlier, where the majority of these visual novel games, anime games, you don't have the porn inserted into them until you go to an external source to patch it, huh?
Yes.
But if it's a game that we know coming in from the get-go that is supposed to be pornographic, shouldn't Steam be aware of that and at the same time be like, okay, so we know what you're doing. We know you can't post the external links to your porn, but they shouldn't be like a delivery system for these games. I mean, they can get these games cheaper on Steam as opposed to, like, let's say going to J2 Games or someplace like that. What do you think?
A lot of it also really comes down to the fact that there's one thing there's one thing that out of everything that somebody I was talking with you the other night about this specifically. 1 day on Steam is the equivalent of getting enough paid time on any of those other sites over 1, maybe even 2 weeks each. So these visual novels that are coming up and they're getting this visibility on Steam, that's a big deal, and that's a lot more money than they could get on GOG or J2A or Green Man or whatever other miniature sites that these games may be showing up on, nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to notice these games on any other platform because they're not going to get the same visibility. Because of the fact that Steam has that sort of an algorithm where if you liked this, here are all these other games in a queue specifically so that you can see what other games exist with these tags that you like and you have bought previously and you've played for more than 20 minutes. And then boom. That's a huge difference. So to see something like that happen with these games, and where all of a sudden they're like, you're blatantly pornography, we're really going to have to apologize, you have to patch it so that it's not, when clearly these games were put out into a point where they followed in suit, and the only way they become pornographic is if you research the game and find the patches, as we've been talking about this whole time, to make it pornographic.
Okay. I don't know if there's much more we can dig up on this topic, to be truthfully honest. It's just...
I mean, at that point, it just becomes hearsay and conjecture. I mean,
right. I mean, at this point, at the end of the day, what it basically comes down to is, I understand why Steam did what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably contacted externally by some entity or group of entities, telling them to check out all of these games. And
mm-hmm.
I do want to be clear. I do think that a lot of these devs are very much skirting the edges of what probably should be acceptable on a platform like that.
Mm-hmm.
While it is completely reasonable to say parents should be responsible for for what their kids see and do and whatnot, and I totally agree, it can be difficult to understand what it is that your kids are getting into necessarily at this point. And, unfortunately, we can't force the culture to fix itself. So I can understand Steam wanting to put some controls in place. I do feel as though Steam needed to do better than reaching out to these people and telling them, you have 2 weeks to fix your shit. And I do understand Steam, not necessarily doing anything about it until recently because, hundreds of games are released basically every day, every week, whatever. They don't have the time to try out all of this stuff. They don't have the time to play all the stuff and make sure of the content that's in it. If somebody reaches out to them and says, there's pornographic content in this, they're going to have to follow up on it on a case-by-case basis. The games were probably reported by this entity, this watchdog group, and Steam.
They were pressured.
Right. They probably weren't even pressured necessarily. It's probably the same general principle as is used to pillory down voices that people don't like on social media.
Of course.
A group will decide we don't like thing, and they'll mass report it. It's basically just, crazy censorious dipshits replacing douchebag internet trolls in this case. So they reported all of these games, and Steam probably finally followed up with, the mass reporting, said, hey, these games do have, some stuff. Let's look into this. And then, they questioned the developers and said, hey, we need you to fix this stuff. Then it comes out that, it's part of an organized reporting scam from a group that used to be Morality and Media. Steam probably says, no, go fuck yourself. And I do think that this is, my major takeaway is that I do hope that Steam ultimately does not go back on this, and that I do very much hope that, this is not a point of contention, that we don't have to keep coming back to this. Because I would very much like it if we can slowly push further towards the idea of sexual liberation and not sexual regression. I do absolutely think that Steam should be telling groups like the National Center on Sexual Exploitation to take a sugar-frosted fuck off of the end of their metaphorical dick.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong.
Because fuck morality groups in general. They're all awful. They're just the worst, and we should never ever be giving them even a fucking millimeter. I don't care what the topic is. Absolutely fuck these people. Nobody gives a shit what they think. I also do want to note one more time before we leave the topic. The fuck Ryan Coons. And fuck everybody who coined the term waifu holocaust. Because just fuck you. Just fuck you. Okay?
It is a stupid thing.
Like, says,
having having a couple of characters, having a couple of things get, contested online is not comparable to the extermination of the Jewish race. You fucking morons. Just eat shit.
If anything, it's an inquisition. Just saying.
Yes.
And pretty much what Ken Pachi in chat says. Why are people getting so upset about a darn drawing? It's just that. It's a drawing. I get it. It's
no one ever expects the Spanish Inquisition.
It's a sense of morality and boobies. We're afraid of the boobies. Boobies. What am I going to do? I don't know. Look, there's a reason why there are specific games that are banned on Twitch where people don't actually get to watch it, because they're not going to be responsible for those games being played. 99% of those games are pornography in general, except for Wife or Yandere Simulator. But that's another topic for another time. And speaking of a dead horse...
Speaking of a dead horse, segue. Before we begin the next topic of conversation, however, I want to take the time to thank everybody for tuning in tonight to GVN Live. I am the host, Robert Hubbs, or Fight Club Hubbs, and with me is Jan and Mr. Mark B. Writing. Please hit that follow button. I already had somebody do that. Be sure to also check out their Twitch channels when you get the chance, and follow them on Twitter whenever you also have the chance as well. You can see their names right there on their cameras. That is also the names you would use for their Twitch channel as well if you wish to follow them. So, segueing into, dead, beaten horses, ladies and gentlemen, I will turn this one over to Jan. So, Jan, dead horses.
So, speaking of dead horses, so tonight's main topic, of course, is dead companies. And we've done this before already. We did one previously. However, this one, we were kind of, bouncing back and forth for a couple of different topics, but I brought up the subject of Maxis because Maxis is sort of near and dear to my heart, because back in the day, late 80s, early 90s, when I finally got upgraded into a computer that was color. Ooh, fancy. I'm really old.
So are we all.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I had my gallbladder removed and my spine still hurts, but what am I going to do?
My shoulder hurts, my legs hurt. We're getting old, Jan. I got gray in my beard. Actually, my beard is practically gray at this point.
We're not going to talk about that. Anyway, Maxis is a company that's very near and dear to my heart, purely just because of what they built. Obviously, if you know the name Maxis, you probably think of The Sims. That's kind of like their titular. At this point, that's the one game that everyone remembers from recently. But they were actually founded back in 1987 by Will Wright and Jeff Braun under the name Maxis Software. And this is funny, Jeff's father told him that video game companies should have 2-syllable names and should include an X.
Good advice.
So that's why they named it Maxis. Kind of funny. It's got to have an X and 2 syllables. Maxis. That makes sense to me.
Not to be confused with Maxis Telecommunications.
Which I think is, Malaysia? Anyway.
Yeah.
So, 1987 happens. They initially published the very first game under their logo, which is, of course, SimCity. It was originally only for home computers, and it was originally only available on a limited basis on the Commodore 64, because other publishers didn't really show interest in porting it, because they didn't think that it had because of the fact that it didn't have a defined win or lose condition. They didn't want to publish it. They were just like, nah, we don't think people are really going to want to play a game that you can't really win or lose again. Isn't that the point of a game? Is, because you've been brought up on board games and card games, and everything has a positive or negative, point to it. And this is a game that just kept on going and going and going forever, and there was no end to it unless you turned it off. So a lot of people just didn't want to touch it. So, but they kept pushing it and pushing it. And they saw more being more and more popular, not just on Commodore, but then other PCs as well. And it became to be the most popular and one of the most popular and successful video game franchises of all time.
Hey,
period.
I got it for the Amiga 500. I had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, as Maxis grew and became more popular, they spawned multiple sequels and spin-offs, including games like Sim Ant and Sim Farm and Sim Tower and Sim Earth. There's a lot of Sims out there. After everything went through, all the way up until 1994, they finally released their SimCity 2000. It actually was a huge success for them when they released SimCity 2000. And in 1994, when it released, and the success of the game was well deserved, they actually moved from Orinda, California to Walnut Creek, which is where the main Maxis branch existed until its closure and subsequent purchase by EA. Obviously now Maxis wasn't trying to be a one-trick pony, and they did create other games such as some non-simulation games, and all the way up until I believe it was Windows 98. Remember that good old Windows 3D pinball that came with literally every copy of Windows? Yeah, that was Maxis.
Oh, Jan, just want to show you this real quick. A sealed copy of Sim Ant. I found this at a thrift store about 5 years ago for $10.
And that's why it's still sealed, because it's not worth playing. Look, I played Sim Tower personally. I thought Sim Tower was one of my favorite ones. But the baseline is that obviously SimCity was really like their claim to fame. It was really what put them into. They had other games. There's one called Skull. They had Simcopter, and that was about it. Things started going downhill really quickly. About that point in time, we're rolling into 1996 or so. They acquired Cinematronics and created games. They actually created Full Tilt Pinball, and they also created another game called Crucible. Again, not really popular games. And of course, after the losses and a full-on lack of actual direction, Maxis basically said, okay, I don't know what else we're going to do. Maybe we can entertain the idea of being purchased. And that's exactly what happened. In 1997, EA come around. They said, you know what, Maxis, we want to buy you. We're going to do a stock swap, which at that point valued Maxis at $125 million and completed on July 28th of 1997. At that point, they were basically told, hey, what? We're still trying to finish SimCity 3000. EA said, go for it. You guys can build that whenever you want. Do it on your own time. We don't care. Build it, finish it, release it. That'll be fine. At that point, once they released 3000, Wheelwright was that. Then at point, Wright was moved full time to start working on The Sims, the dollhouse simulator, basically. EA basically said, you can do it, but we're not really sure this is going to be a good idea. To EA, it was basically a huge gamble to the gaming demographic at that time. They basically said, well, we don't think this is going to work, but go for it, I guess. When it released in February of 2000, it brought so much success that Wright's rep basically was saved. And Maxis basically was allowed to stay as a separately working unit from under the EA umbrella. They were still Maxis, but under EA.
Pretty much like Rare, but under Nintendo, right?
Exactly. Up and through the early part of the decade, they continued to produce expansions and sequels to The Sims. But at that point, that was really all they were pushing out. That was it. It was just The Sims, The Sims, The Sims. They couldn't keep the lights on in Walnut Creek, and they moved everyone to Redwood City, where the EA main studios were. Between 2004 and 2009, when Wheelwright left, the only game at that point, besides the spin-off The Sims Studio, and they did attempt this Sims Online shenanigans, which didn't even make it out of beta, was Spore. They announced Spore in 2006. but because of its release taking as long as it did and not coming out until 2008, people were like, uh, uh, EA, why? Because obviously everyone blames EA because
Hey, you're forgetting about the really awesome
that's the thing they do.
pre-release for Spore that they had, the Creature Creator.
So the Creature Creator was great, and it had a really great idea, and a lot of people thought that that was really what the game was going to be all about, was just the creatures. And when the game actually came out, everyone was kind of like, this is nothing like what we expected. This is terrible. This is garbage. EA is bad. And that really is kind of where a lot of the everybody hates EA shenanigans have actually come from, was the release of Spore. I mean, there was some other games that came out around the same time that EA was basically responsible for, but that Spore was really kind of the start of all of the EA hate, to be completely honest. As you're going through the rest of the early 2000s all the way until 2012, EA finally announced, hey, you know what? We're gonna do SimCity. Just again, we're rebooting SimCity. This is the game that made the company. This is the game that made the franchise. It's the only reason the Sims in general even exist. So that's a thing. And they announced the new logo, and it basically is what allowed them to replace the old EA Play brand by turning Maxis into the new younger demographic, simpler demographic type of group that they wanted them to be, which at this point basically is what spelled the end of Maxis in general. At that point, you've got various Sims franchises and sequels all the way up and including Sims 3 and 4 in the works.
The
but
debacle
it just
of the Sims 4 or SimCity 4.
Yeah, it didn't work out. And that basically led to the final group of Maxis employees being let go and the closure of the actual Maxis studio happening in September 25th of 2015 and consolidating the Maxis brand into the EA Mobile division, which at that point then also is where it basically is EA Mobile, Maxis, and BioWare are now considered the EA worldwide franchise as of 2016, relegating them to a simple simulation genre between 3 games. That's it. That's all that's left for Maxis now, is a legacy of 3 games. Sims 4, Sims Mobile, and SimCity Build It. And 2 of those 3 games are mobile games. You can only get them on Android and iOS. You cannot get Sims 4 on mobile because it's PC, and Sims Mobile and SimCity Build It are the last living legacies of what Maxis software has to offer. And it's really sad because you can look up Maxis, and the first thing you see is ea.com/Maxis, and all it does is give you this bright, happy person sitting on a bench with a bunch of Sims looking at them with a little diamond over their head, and that's it. That's where a company who helped sort of define the simulation genre enough to a point where it got relegated to my phone, Mm-hmm. And that sucks because when you really think about what it was that they did and how the genre basically became viable, if EA hadn't taken the gamble on The Sims, who knows where we could have been in that sort of a term of, that genre may not even exist, or if it did, it might be really god awful. Oh wait, if you think about the genre, there's only 2 games you think about: SimCity and The Sims. That's it. When you think of Maxis, that's all you know of is SimCity and The Sims, because those are the only games that we were ever able to actually make. And it sucks because they had so many great ideas when it came to the simulation genre. It just ended up being that people just got simmed out, and all that's really left at this point.
Or better sim games came out at the time, like Civilization or Dungeon Master by or the Dungeon game by Peter Molyneux. I mean, Peter Molyneux, if anything, he made a lot better sim games than what Maxis and Will Wright had to offer. I mean,
and I don't deny that. The thing is, though, is that Will Wright and Jeff Braun are pretty much the fathers. They are the originators.
Yeah, they are the fathers.
The genre.
They gave birth to
They are the ones who gave they gave birth to the simulation genre. And without them Peter Molyneux's idea probably wouldn't have caught on.
Populous. Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are plenty of games that came out after Maxis created SimCity in 1987, and without SimCity, there's a lot of types of games that I think personally just wouldn't exist. Or if they did, it's like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of craziness going on here, and we could all, we could all shout the naysay and pitchforks and torches and let's burn down EA. But what are we gonna do? We're just gonna keep letting it happen, and a lot of it is just because the genre isn't popular anymore. There's one game that everyone thinks of when you think of simulation, and that's The Sims.
To be truthfully honest, I mean, as much as I want to give Will Wright the respect he deserves for, creating the genre and creating the Sims franchises, to be truthfully honest, he really came off as nothing more than just a two-trick pony. I mean, if anything, SimCity was a great game and concept, and every iteration of it that came out just did nothing more than expand on the ideas that he set forth. The Sims itself, with just an expansion, but instead of micromanaging a city, now you're micromanaging the activities and day-to-day things of a household. Yes, and it just pretty much was just like, okay, we're going to go from the outside world, but now we're going to zoom into the inside world. Sim Ant was kind of like the same thing. Then you had Spore. Spore was supposed to be both of those, but on a galactic scale, and it didn't work. And after that, around 2009, as we know, Will left, and he's working on his first game now that he hasn't. He's a game called Proxy. Not much info I have on that. Players will be able to create and control the memories of their proxy or an artificial intelligence. That's much. It's his first game he's worked on in 10 years.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens, but
credit where credit's due. I mean, honestly, to be honest, credit where credit's due. They created a genre that basically led the way for a lot of games that we may not have ever thought of even being possible now because of the fact that they did what they did.
Yeah.
Like you said, Age of Empires, Civilization, Masters of Orion, Stellaris. A lot of these games that are super popular now may not have even had what the popularity they have now, or may have been built or put together in a completely different fashion than they are now, had it not been for Will Wright and Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, too, I mean, as the years went on, these franchises were literally beaten into the ground. I mean, the Sims franchise itself was beaten into the ground. Do I need to point out how many expansions both Sims 1 and 2 each had? I mean, for crying out loud, I think there was at least 12 to 14 add-on releases for Sims 2. One of them is like Pet Edition, where you can now have pets in your game, or College Days, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. There's the thing about The Sims is that The Sims just expanded. The idea of having the ability to not just have fans be able to patch in or add additional content into the game themselves by going into the game's code and creating the items themselves, but also having massive amounts of expansions coming out, like Sims 3 College Days, or there was another expansion for Sims, the original Sims that did
Pool Party,
giant Christmas expansion,
Pool
Party, you name it. Any of these expansion packs that are $20 a pop that add hundreds of new customization options to the house, the people, and the clothing, and they had the dogs, and then you had babies, and the Grim Reaper shows up, and you can set everyone on fire. You can stick people in a square room, lure them in, take the door away, and watch them pee themselves to death. Hey, internet culture.
Yeah.
Whatever. But you understand that the baseline is that had it not for these guys, these games wouldn't even exist. Or if they did, like I said, they'd be in a completely different wheelhouse. A lot of these games probably wouldn't even play the same had it not been for SimCity and Maxis putting together the idea that this was something that really made a lot of sense. And to be fair, Maxis was probably one of the first real companies that I actually played almost all of their games because they were cheap and they were easy to get into, and they didn't have that defined win-lose scenario, that win-lose condition that almost every other game that exists has. If you really look at the baseline of it, games like Age of Empires, games like Stellaris, games like, if it's not The Sims or SimCity, there is a purely, clearly defined end game there is a clearly defined I win, I lose scenario that can actually occur, especially in a game like like Stellaris. Basically, and this might be a bit controversial, but the baseline is The Sims and SimCity are basically single player MMOs.
Now
They don't have an end. They don't have an actual. While there might be an end game to have a city be able to perpetuate itself in a position that it doesn't need your intervention for X amount of time, but that's a self-created situation. It's not clearly defined in the game, whereas the ideas have the ability to basically say, this is the way the game ends. You would have to start a brand new game if X, Y, Z occur. That doesn't happen in The Sims. That doesn't happen in SimCity. It never has. It never will, because that's the way those games perpetuate themselves. Otherwise, a lot of these other games, they have a win condition or a lose condition. You can, in fact, lose those other kinds of games because those games are built to the original standard of win-lose, where these two games were not.
Okay, so I got a good question here, and I want to get Mark's take on it as well. They did do Maxis and Will Wright did try to do some other games in the early career of the company. Games like the Crystal Skull, Simcopter, Full Tilt Pinball, Crucible, but they were all flops. Do you think because of these flops that has stifled their creativity of taking shots at trying to be doing other games, which is what got them stuck in a pattern of just releasing all these sim-based games? Do you think they would have been a different company if, let's say, they were able to still try and have their hand at, being creative and creating new genres or different games in the same genre and whatnot? What do you guys think? Like let's say they try another hand at doing another pinball game or something like that, and it would be more popular than the first, but we wouldn't know because they didn't attempt it after the first.
They were trying new games all the way into the late 90s / early 2000s. Not even just like sim games, like Streets of SimCity came out in 97, don't forget. And that was a fucking Carmageddon type deal.
Yeah. Crucible was basically a Diablo clone.
Right. It's very much a case where they probably would have continued attempting to, for lack of a better way of explaining it, do original stuff if there had been money there for them to do it. I don't think them leaning back on doing original content was because they didn't want to. I think it was because there just wasn't any money in doing it. When The Sims came out, that was a gold mine for them. I think if they had come up with another concept, EA would have said, sure, do it. And, Spore kind of shows that EA was willing to just shrug and go, yeah, make whatever, we don't care. So long as there's a profit involved, do it. And I don't necessarily like the idea of defending EA in any situation, but it does need to be noted here. Maxis's failures here as a developer kind of sort of come down partially to the fact that, they didn't have any ideas outside of The Sims. I do think that it is entirely EA's fault that Maxis is in the condition that it's in now, but all Maxis has as ideas is The Sims and SimCity. They don't have anything else to really offer players at this point, because anything else that they have made has been poop. Spore was not very good. Dark Spore, which was based off of the Spore engine, was not very good. Most of their sim games that were not SimCity or The Sims were not very good. Streets of SimCity was not very good. You can continue going backwards as far as you want. The vast majority of the games that they were involved in some capacity or another, were that weren't these games.
Do you think, as a result, maybe because of Maxis and their constant poor quality of games that they've been putting out under the EA label when they became, acquainted with them, as well as, EA giving them as much leeway as they possibly want with games like SimCity 3000, and then it end up biting them in the ass. Do you think this is one of the reasons why EA became such a hands-on, tight-nip asswad of a company after all this stuff fiasco, all this stuff with Maxis?
No, I just think that that's a change in the way that they do business in general.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it was Maxis specifically that put them there.
Well, not
that may have been
specifically, but like they were getting all kinds of companies under their wing in the early 2000s. I mean, they acquired Bullfrog, which was pretty much Peter Molyneux's company. Maxis is equal in terms of the simulation genre, and a bunch of other companies as well. And it just seemed like EA was very open in the early 2000s, late 90s with their companies about, hey, you know what? You have ideas, go do them. And it just seemed like Maxis was the one company that just didn't seem to have that many ideas, and they were just pretty much just trying to roll with what they know. And I guess EA got frustrated with them over time because they weren't really putting out anything.
Here's the thing with EA.
Mm-hmm.
EA is absolutely willing to give developers whatever amount of space that they need to make a game, and they have shown in a lot of cases that they will actively lean back on being in control of a situation, that they will actively give a developer whatever amount of space that they need to make whatever games that they're going to make. They don't seem to particularly care very much about the idea of enforcing mandatory development on dev houses under their auspices, except in certain circumstances. You can blame some aspects of the failure of Maxis on EA, just as you can blame some of the failures of many other things on EA. The failure of Mass Effect Andromeda was in large part due to EA leaving the studio in the hands of a bunch of people who had never been studio runners before, and just letting them do whatever they wanted for 5 years. That was a bad management call.
Mm-hmm.
But they also forced them to use that fucking Frostbite engine that sucks.
Garbage!
This is the third fucking time now that a studio has been killed because of a fucking shit engine. But so there's parts that are definitely the fault of EA. But at the same time, that studio was given 5 years to make a game, and they made Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't remember the name of the company that made the Dead Space games. Irrational? No.
Dead Space was crap. Not Irrational Games.
Visceral.
Visceral, yes.
Visceral.
Right. Visceral.
Yeah.
Visceral was fucked into making stuff that they didn't want to make, to be sure. That one is 100% on EA. But they were also given the ability to do what they wanted with the Dead Space franchise for years, and the games just didn't make the money that they wanted. Say what you will, that's their expectation. They want you to make money. You need to make them money. The Sims makes money, but it hasn't been making the kind of money they've expected, so they've been kind of meddling in the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
More recent problems with Maxis have been EA's fault. Let's be clear. SimCity in 2013, that was 100% an EA problem. SimCity 4, that was 100% an EA problem. But from 2000 until SimCity came out, no, that was a Maxis problem. That was 100% a Maxis problem. The Sims Online was a bad idea in general. Fine. But leaning in too hard on the expansion packs for The Sims to diminishing returns. SimCity 4, and it's not necessarily great handling of what needed to be done. Spore, in general. Like, these are the reasons why Maxis ultimately became what they are now. And that's on Maxis. The modern stuff that is, Maxis as done by EA is EA's fault. But they had a long time before they got to that point, and they dug themselves their own hole.
All right. Do we have any more? We can go in on in regards to this topic, or do we pretty much wrap it up at this point?
I mean, we could wrap it up because otherwise we're going to end up talking about microtransactions again, and I really don't want to have to go into that tonight. That's an entire episode.
That's like 3 episodes at once, right there.
Totally.
So, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have tuned in, I just want to let you know that we are nearing the end of tonight's episode. Do hit that follow button, though. This is GVN Live. It is a bi-weekly podcast that I host right here on this Twitch channel. I am joined every time with Jan and Mark B. Writing right here. That is their Twitters right there in their cameras that you can follow, as well as their Twitch usernames if you choose to follow their Twitch channels as well. Our next show will be on June 4th. I'd like to make mention real quick. Maybe we can just do this for a little bit. Next week, next Monday, if we weren't, indisposed last week, would be the 3-year anniversary of this show.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jan, this is your first year with us on the show. Well, pretty much you've been with us for the first 5 months. Mark, you've been here practically for all 3 seasons so far. So I'd like to get you guys to maybe share a little retrospective of the show and your thoughts and all that as well. To, celebrate a Mox anniversary, if we will. So, Mark, you've been here the longest. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
You're fine.
No, I'm not. I'm not asking for you to talk about me. I'm not asking about me.
Good night, everybody!
Hey!
The show's been fine.
As Mark would say, it's
the
okay.
show's been fine, ladies and gentlemen. The from the intellectual mind of Mark B. Writing, his thoughts on the past 3 years of this show. It's been fine.
It's been fine.
It's been fine. I don't like the show has generally had its hiccups. It's had its ups and downs. I feel this is the strongest that we have been pound for pound overall, but there has definitely been some difficulties associated along the way. I think overall it's been a good show. It's been a good time, and I think we're the strongest that we've ever been.
Okay. Any favorite moments that we've had along the way? Memorable moments? Anything that sticks out to mind, or you're just like, it just happened?
Our debate about Final Fantasy VI versus Final Fantasy VII was pretty good, I would say.
You'll never let that one go, of course.
Oh, good.
Listen, I won. Fuck you.
I mean, as long as it's Final Fantasy VII, I'm okay.
It should have been part 2, but that looks like it may never happen, but whatever. And Jan, for you, memorable moments, your thoughts as you've been with us for this season 3, the past 4 or 5 months. Or actually, when did you join us? At the end of beginning of this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the award show. So please share your thoughts.
I'm actually really grateful for being able to be here. So the first thing is when Mark basically said that there's a possibility of being able to come on the show just as maybe as a special guest every once in a while, that was like a dream for me, because like I've been trying to become a broadcaster for a while, and I've been trying to sort of put myself to a position where I can actually be able to get in front of a camera and entertain people and
Don't read the chat, Mark. Don't read the chat.
The chat. I'm like, uh-oh, I may have lit a fire. Oopsies. I may have made a boo-boo. But no, I mean, Mark's been great. You've been great. Everything's been pretty awesome so far. I mean, it's only been 5 months, and this is the way to go. So, oh, here we go. Objectively, we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, but yeah, no, this has been awesome. Being able to be here every other week, be able to talk to you guys about the things that I love, and that you love, and that everyone else that we watch loves, and have the ability to put my face in front of dozens of different people every 2 weeks, and getting a chance to really get to know more people and talk with people about the hobbies that we share and the things that we love, video games and topics that concern us in general. And I think it's been a great thing. And I'm really happy to have been able to meet a lot of people here. And honestly, I can say that I really do think that there's a lot of extra love here, just because of the fact that we've got some big time YouTubers that come in every once in a while, and they just keep praising all of us at the new format and the new show and everybody on it. And so I'm happy to be here for 5 months. I hope it's more than 5 years, and we'll just keep going and have fun with it. I think that's the best part.
For me, I just want to say that I'm real happy that this project has been going on for as long as it has, and I've had some wonderful supporting cast members. You guys weren't really originally part of the original GVN lineup, which was actually about 5 or so years ago when I started doing the GVN podcast, GVN Radio, and that was a completely different show, different type of thing going on. It was actually me and a couple friends who were just in the room, and we just fed off of each other's energy. That's not to say that we don't do that here, but we do it on a much more intellectual level. For the most part, I don't measure up to you guys, and that's not really a bad thing in my regard, because I feel like through you guys I learned so much more, and I also become a better host because of everybody who has been a part of this show. And on top of that, I also enjoy interacting with the audience that watches us. And they're very lively today. I have to say, this is the chattiest they've been in a long time. And I'm really grateful for each and everybody who, chooses to jump into the show and watches us. And I'm actually grateful for, first off, Mark, I'm really grateful for you for being a very patient man who has stuck by me for this show for, the past 3 years, including the iteration of GVN Radio for the couple of years that it's been in flux in terms of its release schedule. And I look forward to this show to continue on even longer. Maybe we can get another 4th member somewhere down the line to round us out. We have a very strong crew right here. That's not to say that past members weren't as strong. I did enjoy having Emily, and I did enjoy having Keith around. I did enjoy having some of our guests around. I was trying to see if I can get Mr. Brian Dawson back on here again. He is interested. He just doesn't have a very open schedule. He does like movie premiere reviews and stuff like that, so he wasn't able to join us the last Monday because he actually went and saw Solo. Other people like Rico, the guys from GameSack, who actually came on the show twice. Go figure. I don't know how I managed to convince them to do that. So GVN Live has been a lot of fun, and thank you to everybody out there. Any final thoughts, anything you guys want to plug before we say goodnight? We'll start with you, Jan.
I wasn't paying attention. What was the question?
You hit the mute button on me, didn't you?
No, I just wasn't paying attention. I was trying
now,
to
any final thoughts, anything you want to share or plug before we say goodnight?
I'm starting my streaming again, now that I'm actually settled in and I've got a place. I'm working on getting a green screen soon, I guess. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Otherwise, you get to see my awesome living room, which is not the best, but okay.
Such a lively living room. It's better than this fire I'm sitting in.
That's your own fault. You set that, you get to stay in that.
This is fine.
But yeah, no, I'm actually starting my streaming back up again, probably this weekend, maybe. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to actually try to shoot for a little bit more regularity and actually getting stuff probably more than 1 or 2 days a week, and actually getting a little bit more into streaming a little bit more often, simply just because we have a gamer house now, because there's 3 of us in this house and we all video game a lot on PC and consoles, and there's a lot of consoles. I can't
hope
really
you have good internet.
Place, but, yeah, I made sure of that. But yeah, no, it's a little crazy, but yeah, I mean, other than that, you know, you can follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Twitch, and hopefully I'll see more of you guys soon. It'll be pretty awesome.
All right, and from you, Mark, any final thoughts? Anything you want to plug?
I'm trying to get a thing together that I'm doing called Three Dumb Jerks, where it's going to be me and 2 other people playing video games on stream. I don't have a debut episode lined up as of yet. Kind of trying to work it out, but I'm not 100% done with it right now. I do want to plug one thing that I've actually been following along with. A gentleman on Twitch known as Mr. Pure Instinct, MR Pure Instinct, has been doing some charity stuff for the month of May for a charity called Hope for the Day, which is a charity about depression. Crystal introduced me to his work because he did a 12-hour live stream in Evansville at a streaming location that they actually have set up, so people can like rent the space. Yeah, it's pretty neat. I want everybody to check out Mr. Pure Instinct if they can. He's a really funny guy. He deserves the attention in general. I think he's a really good streamer who makes really good content. He's actually streaming right now, so if you find folks out there are willing to do this thing, I think we should actually raid him and send him our people when we sign off here.
Yep.
But yeah, he's been trying to collect charity for the month of May. He's a great dude. I've been bullshitting with him for the past few days since initially attending the 12-hour stream, and he's just a really nice guy who really seems dedicated to the charity work. And he's giving away free game codes, so what's not to love?
No, yeah, totally.
It sounds like a really fun time. I hope his stream continues to do very well. And do you have the link on him? You can go ahead and post that in the chat. And I can definitely I'll host him right after this, as a matter of fact.
Like I said, I think we should rate him.
Sounds good. All right, so thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Do definitely check out Mr. Pure Instinct when the show is over. Remember, just to remind you, June 4th is our next show. Topic is currently up in the air. I mean, I think we do have a strong topic lined up for the next show. We're just working on another topic at hand. We're still in this.
Pretty sure we'll do a book club pretty soon.
We should definitely do one. We'll probably do one at the end of June. Does that sound good to everybody? Final show of June? All right, another book clubs. Sweet.
Works for me.
Who got to pick the game last time? Was it me? I
think so. I think so.
Yeah, I picked the last game. So how about this? We will... Jan,
oh, good. I get to pick a game now.
You get to pick the game, Jan, so I'm just letting you know. Okay. Go ahead, pick your game, and then let us know what the game is at the end of the show on June 4th.
That'll work.
So there we go. Something for us to look forward to. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I am Fight Club Hubs. This is GVN Live. Have a good night.